So today I'm going to diminish my opponent's claim that the Electoral College fails to represent United States voters by proving to you that his claims are negligible. My supporting claims are as follows. 1, my opponent's sources are not credible. 2, each vote counts towards an elector of the same political party as the presidential candidate. 3, the voting power of individuals will not increase under a popular voting system. And 4, the Electoral College has been successful in representing voters in 91% of elections. So for my first claim that Alexander's sources aren't acceptable or credible, in the article that Alexander used in his argument, written by Eric Black, called Why the Electoral College is a Problem, the article mainly sounds like a whole bunch of biased opinion and hardly any factual evidence. The only information I could find on Eric Black when attempting to test his credibility on the subject was that he was previously a blogger and a journalist for a newspaper. Most of his other evidence is from articles that talk about the possibility of electors voting unfaithfully for a candidate they weren't supposed to vote for. Although this is a possibility, it is very rare, and I will speak more on that subject later. So for my second claim that our vote votes for an elector of the same political party as the presidential candidate, I am going to prove that each vote does count. My opponent stated that the fate of the presidential election lies solely in the ballots of roughly 500,000 people. He was partly correct. There are currently 538 members of the Electoral College who make the final vote, but the main idea that he is ignoring is that each of their votes derives from the popular votes. So when we vote, we are actually voting for a slate of electors that are supporting the presidential candidate that we would like to win. These electors that we are voting for belong to the same political party as the presidential candidate, and whichever group of electors win the popular vote, they get to join the Electoral College vote session where they will then make the final vote on the presidential candidate with 1 vote per person. Although we do not directly vote for the president, we are directly voting for the elector whose sole purpose is to vote for the candidate they are supporting publicly. For my third claim, the voting power of individual citizens will not increase under a popular voting system for electing the president. I found a study done at Columbia University titled Empirically Evaluating the Electoral College. They used statistical reasoning and historical data on every single election since 1960 to prove that the individual vote would have nearly the same exact influence in a popular vote system as it does in the Electoral College system. They use mathematical equations to compare the difference in the weight of a single vote in 3 different systems. The first one is by popular vote, the second is an Electoral College system with winner-take-all by state, and the third is winner-take-all by congressional district. Their end result is a graph with the election year on the horizontal axis and the average probability that your vote is decisive on the vertical axis. You can clearly see that the outcome is unaffected by the different types of systems used to elect a president. Now, my opponent's last claim was that this indirect method of voting allowed the electors to skew voting censuses. According to the government website of National Archives and Records Administration, 26 states actually require electors to vote for a specific candidate depending on the popular vote, either by state law or with pledges to their political party. The other 24 states are not bound by laws or pledges to vote for the candidate with the popular vote. Although this is true, it poses very little problem and leads me to my fourth and final claim that the Electoral College has been successful in representing the people and the popular vote in 91% of elections. Only 4 out of 44 elections has the presidential candidate won the electoral votes without winning the popular vote. This last piece of factual evidence, I feel, stands strong enough to completely diminish the significance of my opponent's claim. He argues that voters are not being represented fairly, but out of 44 elections in United States history, 40 of them have represented the popular vote as they were supposed to.
All right, just a couple comments. We'll keep it really short. it's clearly organized, but it's not clearly organized in response to the advocate's claims. You sound like you've created your own structure. There are some places where you refer to arguments that the advocate presented, but it's very hit or miss when those arguments come up. The argument about the advocate's source being biased or problematic is a little bit broad. I do think that one of the things that you might want to do is point out that the evidence that you're using comes from sources that you at least think are authoritative. You cite a Columbia University study. At one point, you've got some factual data about the states and what their laws and rules are on those particular situations. I assume that there were citations for some of the other research that you presented, and I think that's the way that you make that argument instead of say, this is somebody's opinion about this, but let's look at what the facts are concerning those things, and we won't be opinion based, and we don't even know that this person is an authoritative political scientist on this issue. They are a blogger. So's Mr. Kirkham. Would you listen to him? That kind of thing. Okay. Like I said, I thought your arguments were pretty well developed. You had good counterclaims that you're developing, and explanations are relatively clear, especially at the end. So when you talked about the particular issues, I thought you did a good job on that. I think, like I said, at the end, I think you could summarize a little bit more effectively and kind of punch that argument and make it work a little bit more for you. But otherwise, I thought you did fine. All right, thank you.